All right. Hi, everybody. It is so great to be with you all. My name is Heidi Schumacher. I am a pediatrician and school health person at UVM. Have the great honor of being part of the Everyday Counts project over the course of the last year, and really excited to welcome folks to our last in our spring 2026 Zoom series, all about spotlighting excellent work happening across our great state that supports reductions in chronic absence and increases in student engagement. So today our focus is going to be on community schools as a best practice. So how can you leverage, whether you're a formal community school or not, the principles of community schools? How can we learn from folks all across the state that are doing this work as you consider reducing chronic absence, increasing engagement in your community? I'll just remind folks, I'll drop all these links in the chat in just a minute, but each of these sessions, the decks, PowerPoint deck, and the recordings are or will be up on our website. So far, we have the first two sessions up on our website. The one from last week, I think, should be up today or tomorrow, and we'll get this one up as soon as I can. So if you've missed it or you want a refresher, the deck, recording, and resources from each session are really highlighted on our website. So please check it out. And just as a reminder, again, this series is part of our year-long Everyday Counts project, which has been supported generously from the Leahy Institute for Rural Partnerships at UVM, but really is a partnership between healthcare providers and schools, funded in 4 communities, but also really building capacity, knowledge, training, relationships all across the state so that we can all engage in this work together. And we know that many of you already are. So thanks again so much for being here. I'm going to take down my slides. And with great enthusiasm, I'm going to welcome Dr. Bernice Garnett, who leads the Catamount Community Schools Collaborative at UVM. And she is going to introduce 3 amazing speakers who are doing great work in community schools in their respective communities. Welcome, folks. Please do use the chat. We'll be monitoring that throughout. There'll be time for discussion. So hope folks will be actively engaged throughout. And I'll turn it to you, Bernice. Take it away. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you, Heidi, for welcoming us and inviting us to participate in the final webinar series of Everyday Counts. We're really excited to be here. So hopefully everyone can see my screen as we practiced. So I have the great honor of facilitating this panel today. So today we're going to be talking about, I can advance my slides. Yes. In a facilitated panel highlighting 3 amazing community school districts, talking about the ways in which the community schools framework approach can support student belonging, family engagement, and reduce chronic absenteeism. So I'm going to take a moment just to introduce the 3 panelists. So we've got Burlington School District represented by Maria Davies, who's the community school coordinator at the Burlington School District. North Country Supervisory Union, way up in the Northeast Kingdom, represented by Lisa Daigle-Farney, who's the community home liaison. And then Washington Central Union Unified School District in the center of the state, represented by Beck Dezan, the community school coordinator. So thank you all to my community school partners for joining us today. Let me give you a sense of where we're going for the next hour during this lunchtime lunch and learn. I'm going to set the stage for 5 minutes on what are community schools. Many of you joining the call have heard about the term. We might have different meaning makings of the term. So I'm going to set the stage a little bit, framing community schools in Vermont, and then a little bit about national research connected to community schools and chronic absenteeism. And then I'm going to turn the floor over to our 3 partner community school districts, who are each going to spotlight for about 10 minutes the ways in which the community school implementation in their local school districts is supporting student connection, belonging, and reducing chronic absenteeism. And then we'll bring it back together with some Q&A, reflections, and open up to the audience because we'd love to hear from you and how this resonates and connects with your own work. So for some quick table setting, so community schools is a way of approaching public education. It's a mindset, it's a framework, it's a systemic effort to name community schools as a hub of resources that are streamlined and coordinated in partnership with families, educators, and community partners to leverage local assets and partnerships to meet the holistic needs of students, families, and communities, in addition to being hubs of connected learning, right? And so that's sort of the formal definition that was codified in 2021 by Vermont state policy. So the Vermont legislature in 2021 codified community schools policy language in Vermont, even though community schools as an ethos has been around since the turn of the 20th century, with John Dewey and Jane Addams and the whole house in Chicago recognizing that schools are a hub of democratic life and fiercely anti-poverty and connected to equity. And so I just wanted to name some of the policy language in the Vermont state policy because you'll hear that reflected by our community school partners, right? So the Vermont policy on community schools, which is connected to the national framework, organized what we talk about as community schools into 5 pillars: integrated student supports, expanded and enriched learning time, active family and community engagement, collaborative leadership, and then a 5th pillar, which sort of advanced Vermont to a different level because the national model had these 4 pillars: a commitment to safe, equitable, and inclusive learning environments. So you're going to hear today from our panel the ways in which the community school strategies cross-cut all of that policy language. And to give you a sense of the landscape of funded community schools, many Vermont schools are operating with the ethos value structure of community schools, right? And so I want to be clear that this is not an exclusive party, but there are critical positions, the community school coordinator, which you'll hear about from Beck and Maria and Lisa, that are the primary holders of this work, liaisoning and supporting the needs. So across the state right now, funded through the Catamount Community Schools Collaborative, which is a research practice partnership with the Agency of Education, UVM, and our community school partners, we're supporting over 11 districts, roughly 38 schools, and almost 9,000 students across the state in community schools implementation, research, and evaluation. And because community schools is something that is active, intentional, and on the ground, I wanted to play a short digital story that provides some animation to these terms, humanizes the work, and gets us excited about the panel ahead. So I think I'm going to have to quickly switch screens for just a moment here to get the video up. Okay. So you should be seeing the video now. Yeah? Okay, I'm going to play it. Oh, wait. Are you seeing the PowerPoint still?
We see the PowerPoint still.
Hold on. I got excited and I think I'm sharing the PowerPoint and not the video. This is what you should, okay. Share. This, now are you seeing my many tabs?
Yes, all the tabs.
Okay. Okay, here we go.
Community schools look very differently depending upon the very specific needs of the community that they're serving.
So while we all have very different projects, the outcomes are all the same among all the schools. We want increased community engagement. We want a safer school. We want a more equitable school.
All schools seek to be community schools, but this model helps, I think, to prioritize what it could look like.
Basic needs have to come first in order for children to learn.
Where we see that change in student outcomes, and this is just an example, I have a high school student who is on the fridge or dropping out and he's not going to early college next year because of the resources that SIM and her crew have predominantly helped to provide.
We have students pursuing any number of fields that are related to or completely different from what they're getting in school.
Not all child learns the same as the next. She prefers to be a grease monkey, which I'm perfectly okay with. Her father is a mechanic. My son's father is also a mechanic. So for me, I feel like it's reinforced the importance of education for her, but it's also instilled in her the want.
So I think it does give students a sense that school isn't confined to, this physical space, and there are more opportunities for them, and we can connect with them, those opportunities.
So we see this multi-generational distrust in the system, right? And Sam and her crew are really responsible for shifting that mindset.
So that people understand that the building is a space for the community.
As a place for community to gather, to have conversations, to kind of personalize education where that leads.
So to have someone who can maneuver their schedule to be out in the community, to be that liaison, to the resources, services, supports, and also to get to know the needs of the community by being in it is really unique.
We've been able to partner with other organizations where in the past maybe we have competed for services or programming, and now we are working more collaboratively together.
This environment, the physical, emotional, spiritual environment we're in needs to be accessible to students and cannot do them harm.
They feel like their culture and language that they're bringing is respected and valued in the classroom.
One of our goals in terms of the equity pillar was to do some school-wide reads. And now we're doing supervisory wide reads, also holding conversations and facilitating conversations at our local library.
If we don't do that work, then our students who might be typically marginalized students won't have access to their education.
If the learning was more accessible, more relevant, more flexible, and the teachers could see the results of wrapping services and coordinating services between students, that we should see a reduction in absenteeism in ninth grade. And we saw that reduced by almost 50%, which is crazy, right?
What I want people to know is that every building needs community schools coordinator. Every single building needs somebody dedicated to this work.
It's been really great to see youth just really come out and become themselves, whatever that may be. So it's been super incredible. I think it's, it's hard to realize that the grant's ending.
I went to Philadelphia to that national conference. I was like in shock. There are 3,000 people that are doing the same work, but I'm one of 5 community school coordinators in Vermont, right? So I just think the community school approach is something whose time has come.
Okay. I'm gonna end that and then quickly switch back to the other screen. While I'm doing that, I want to give a major shout out to Ned Castle and Frames for Life, our amazing partner in video ethnographic documentation, who allowed that to come to life. So thank you to Ned and to the community schools that were highlighted on that film. And hopefully that gave you a sense of the pillars that I was talking about in the policy that were sort of named above. And you're going to hear more about that from our panel in just a moment. And sort of nationally, community schools has been around again since the turn of the century and funded through the United States Department of Education through their full service community schools grant. And there's been some recent publications naming the relationship between community schools implementation and reduction in chronic absenteeism. And I'll highlight these as resources at the end. But nationally, we're seeing very similar things to we are in Vermont in terms of implementation of community schools and direct relationship to reduction in chronic absenteeism. This is a report from California, and I just highlighted some of my favorite parts. And we're going to hear from the role of family engagement, multi-tiered systems of support, and rigorous, relevant, place-based instruction. And then finally, the last national resource that I'll flag is Attendant Works, which I think you've all engaged with them over the course of this, put out this playbook a couple of years ago and named community schools and restorative practices, which we're going to hear about today, as Tier 1 foundational evidence-based promising practices to reduce chronic absenteeism. So just flagging again, nationally, community schools have been elevated in this space. So these are some of the framing questions that I asked our panelists to think about and that we're going to loop back to at the end, really thinking about vision and implementation, because community schools is a values-based framework that requires a shift and stepping into the role of schools, right? Data and partnerships, lessons learned and impact, and then challenges and priorities. So these are the buckets that we'll loop back to towards the end. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Beck Dezan, the community school coordinator from Washington Central Unified Union School District. Thanks for joining us, Beck.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name's Beck Dezan. I use she, her pronouns. I'm super excited to be here today to talk to you about some of our efforts at Washington Central Unified Union School District. We are a year 1 cohort 2 funded site, which means that we are finishing our year 1 of grant funding through the Catamount Community Schools Collaborative. And we're built out as a hub and spoke model. So U32 middle and high school really being the hub, and the 5 elementary schools building out slowly and intentionally to pilot and then replicate processes. So today I'm actually going to talk to you about Berlin Elementary School, one of our schools within our district where we're spending a lot of time this year. And at the start of the school year, there was an intentional build out of expanded and enriched learning opportunities, both across the district and specifically at Berlin. We wanted to think about and capitalize on the time that students and caregivers and the wider district community would come back into buildings, really thinking about how are we intentionally building connection into our shared physical space and across geography with each other, and coming together, sharing space, being together. And primarily we did that through a community learning series hosted through the nights and evenings in the month of September, where folks ages 5 through 85 came and engaged in felting workshops, bicycle repair, chainsaw sharpening, fruit tree pruning, really interest-based, expanded, easy, low-stakes entry points back into the building and to being together in community. Based on that model, Berlin Elementary School replicated an after-school program where similar interest-based workshops for young people were piloted across 6 weeks. Previously, there had been varied after-school care for the young people at Berlin Elementary School. And for a variety of reasons, really young people were going home at the end of the day and not connected into any additional expanded and enriched out-of-school time programming. What we saw in the 6 weeks of that pilot was 70 young people connecting into those workshops. There was an eco sort of place-based outdoor education opportunity. There was coding, robotics, a maker space, crafts. And what we saw is at the close of that pilot, when we went back to a fee-for-service model, there was a 500% reduction in participation for the young people involved in those programs. So specifically, we were thinking about expanded and enriched programming, that pillar of how are we connecting folks to engaging, relevant, and connected learning, and specifically doing that through these out-of-school time spaces. Berlin also modeled some community library nights. The phenomenal librarian there, Jessie Dahl, once a month brings folks back into the building in the nights by opening up her space and having thematic nights. She did a dog man night. She did Pi 3.14 style, where 50 families came back and to engage both in like accessing books, but also programming there. What we know is that when there are ways for our families to come back into buildings and be together, we both build that sense of belonging and connection, and we also create inroads and relationships with those families. A math interventionist did a first in a really long time math night, where again, 70 families came back to the building. Math and family board game night. Each family went home with a packet of the things to do at home. Local businesses supported this through a raffle where folks won numeracy and literacy games to take home at the end of the night. And again, by creating accessible opportunities for our families to come back into the building in these out of school time spaces, we were deepening this sense of belonging and connection intentionally at Berlin so that folks had entry points back into the building. At the same time, during the school day, the school student support team, the SST team, as part of the multi-tiered system of support, was focused on the pillar of integrated student supports. We were thinking about decreasing barriers to access for families and students. We know that food insecurity is an issue facing many of the families in our district and in our communities. Through a partnership with our local food pantry, we support a weekly food box delivery to families and students. We, since November, have delivered 200 boxes at Berlin, 400 across the district since last June. We've expanded mental health offerings by opening up our space to community practitioners and establishing with providers to utilize that space during the school day. An unused office space becomes a place where young people are not missing seat time by traveling to and from appointments. Bernice, if you can move to the next slide for me, what I want to highlight as we're thinking about this chronic absenteeism, in your upper right-hand corner, this graph, a young person transitioned into the building, was missing significant school. Nearly 50% of their school time was missed. What we know is that by offering services to that young person, most recently, they're missing 5% of their school days. So by creating opportunities to access into mental health services, really decreasing those barriers, their attendance in the building, their lost seat time dramatically reduced. We're collectively partnering across the district with Central Vermont Medical Center to continue to think about how we're building partnerships around school-based health and wellness so that the success of that one child's story becomes something that is more commonplace for our young people. We're thinking about what services can we bring into buildings, how do we integrate student supports and really decrease those barriers, both for lost seat time and also for that deep sense of being held and cared by our schools in our district. The SST team, I want to really speak to how flexibly they've been thinking about data at Berlin. Early on, this was an immediate place to support and respond to students. We had successes off the bat. A young person wasn't coming to school. That team really thought about who's the best person right now relationally to hold a meeting with them. That meeting was held and the stories speak for themselves. The young people would have a transportation plan if the bus was missed. There would be a phone call plan if they weren't here by attendance time. Those young people's attendance rates were deeply impacted by the way that SST was responding to their absences and missed time at school. Another success story is that a family who was not connected in, we sat with them while they made a phone call home. The teacher connected, a classroom teacher connected. That family signed up for Class Dojo. They got classroom updates. They also then signed up for caregiver conferences and really accessed school in a different way because of the support of that contact home. So while we're thinking about out of school time, this expanded and enriched opportunity, creating opportunities to build connection and belonging. And our SST team in the building is thinking about responding to barriers to access and integrating student supports. We also sat in some data that was really telling. So the school during the school day had an opportunity to have an artist in residence. There was a circus performance where young people balanced peacock feathers, they rode a unicycle, they hula hooped ginormous hula hoops, and it was profound. There was a family showing in the standing room only. And really, like, the buzz in the building was that it felt different there. There was this sense of immediate belonging and engagement that was significant. As SST sat in that question, we wondered what the data said. And upon first glance, it didn't really say much. But we dug a little bit deeper. We have a data whiz on that team. And what we saw was that the 3 weeks before the circus, this tier 2 group, this group on the cusp of being chronically absent, had missed about 13% of their school days. When we looked at the data for the 3 weeks after the circus, this moment of sort of profound pivot where there was this palpable sense of connection and engagement, the absenteeism rates of that group dropped to 5%. And so that SST team sat in this question of what happened during that time to make that really significant shift in attendance. And we're calling this the circus hypothesis at Berlin. We identified that there was a deep sense of belonging, that they felt connected, that it was relevant, that they were seen, that they were celebrated. And then we wondered collectively, both in that small group and through a process with staff, what would it take to replicate those conditions in other parts of our building? And staff went through that process. They created both things that they elevated practices that are currently happening and said, hey, let's keep doing this. These are the conditions we want. And they identified places where those conditions could shift for that deep sense of, again, belonging, engagement, relevance, being seen and celebrated. And we have entry points identified. It's small things like playing music when young people walk in to the building, having universal welcoming protocols as people come into the building, and then a recognition culture. How are we creating youth voice and leadership opportunities for our young people that both make them be seen in positions of leadership in the building, but also celebrate the young people for who they are there. That staff is doing the hard work of thinking about what the culture that they have and want in that building is, and they're using data to inform that practice. So we're seeing that those pillars, the expanded and enriched learning, the intentional build out of that, both out of school and then in school, thinking about those questions, coupled with the supports through the integrated student support pillars, is shifting our data. And we're wondering together, how do we intentionally build shared practices that change the experience and outcomes for our young people here?
Awesome. Thank you, Beck, for that comprehensive and very succinct overview of such amazing, profound work. So we're going to hold questions to the end of our panel, and we're going to move from central Vermont to Chittenden County to the Burlington School District, where Maria Davies, who's the Community School Coordinator at Burlington School District, is going to share about the ways in which Burlington School District is leveraging the Community Schools framework to support student belonging. Thanks for joining us, Maria.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. So, like Bernice said, I am Maria Davies. I'm the Community Schools Coordinator for the Burlington School District. And like Beck, you're doing great work. I am just floored Thank you so much for that. I am cohort 2 of year 1 for this grant, and we are working on many, many things. When I first started, I started late in the year last year for the grant itself. And so one of the tasks that I had was really to do a needs and asset assessment inventory of what's out there right now with the Burlington School District. What are we doing and how are we doing it? And what can we do better? What can we leverage to change or tweak? Or what can we get rid of? Because there was a lot that we were doing in silos and not necessarily working collaboratively together. So things started shifting after the needs and asset assessment inventory was done. I did focus the needs and asset assessment inventory on the 9 to 12 grades, really, because that was the bulk of the work. That's where the district wanted me to start. But I never ever forgot about the rest of the elementary schools that were in the background, seeing what we were doing and how we were doing it. Because in all honesty, like Viva said at the beginning of the video, every community school is different. And when we have schools that look like the Burlington School District, where we have 42 different languages plus going, and also a community of new Americans that are coming into our school district, we need to provide different needs from maybe some of the rural Vermont towns that have community schools work going on. They just look slightly different because the support systems have to be a little more robust, and we have the layers of trying to go ahead and translate the documentation into the appropriate language, so we are transparent on what we're doing. And so there's a lot of work that's going on right now, but one of the things that we did try to do was align the community schools pillars with the district priorities, and they align very nicely in many, many cases. So one of the things that we decided to do was really uplift and partner with our families. So what does that look like? Like Beck, where she had that turnaround with the circus. We started reimagining if we partner with our family members and our parents and our community, what can we leverage from that partnership? And what we leveraged was something phenomenal. It was that belonging and well-being that Beck spoke to so much with the work that Beck was doing in the district and is continuing to do in the district. We wanted to bring in the student voice. We are leveraging leadership with youth. And we can't forget the voices of the parents who are our strong partners in this work. They know their youth best. They know exactly what keeps them home, what drives them into school, and what is engaging to their youth. So we need that vital knowledge and information. We can't be deficit view thinking about parents are not engaged, parents don't care, they drop off after high school. They don't. They actually do care. They want to be there for their youth. And they also want to be in understanding about what's happening in schools. So we discovered that, as well as we're uplifting family engagement through our community meals, particularly for our new Americans. We're trying to help them see what we're doing in the district, how we're doing it, who does what, for example, who Tom is, our superintendent, what he does, who does he answer to, and what the cabinet is, what each principal does, what they're responsible for. So the way we're doing it is we're building family connection through providing meals for our families, bringing them into the district and showing them that this is who we are. We run workshops with the family members that come in. We feed them, we provide childcare. So we have a lot of high schoolers that need community service. They provide the childcare for us, and they're able to bring their families in and talk. We bring all our liaisons in different languages, and they interpret every single workshop that we are providing information on. So the last one we did was last Wednesday. It was incredibly well attended. We had such a great turnout of both youth and families, because when families can't attend because they're working at night, because a lot of our parents work at night, our youth attend. Guess what? Those youth are gathering that information and bringing it right back to their family members, including all the documentation that's being provided during the course of that workshop. And the workshops include transparency around what athletics are, who, when are they able to come into the athletics? What power school is? What does that look like? Recently, we've also provided information on know your rights and what happens when an ICE agent comes into the district if they're allowed to come into the district. So we put a lot of things in place to help support our children, our youth, to be able to feel safe in our district. And we've done a really good job because Vermont has added that one pillar of safe, inclusive, and equitable learning environments. They feel safe at school, and I want them to continue to feel safe at school. We all do. But in order for us to be able to do that, we have to show our parents that we're actually putting in, our money where our mouth is. Make sure that you show that, school is safe. No ICE agents. You have to show this warrant. Know your rights. Children know exactly what to do and what to say. And so do our staff members. They know how to protect our kids. So that's really big. Because if you don't feel valued, if you don't feel safe, if you don't feel that you're capable mentally, emotionally to be there, you're not going to learn regardless of it. It's important for them to feel that they actually belong and that they actually are very safe and that their family members are safe out there too. They worry about that, and that contributes to a lot of things. So some of the other work that we're doing to uplift the youth voice is we're doing parent and family and community engagement where we've convened a team of parents of people of the global majority, mainly right now, with community members to talk about how is it that we can find the gaps that the school is currently lacking to see, or we need to push the district in that way to be able to make changes that are positive for our people of the global majority and their youth. And they're really coming up with really good ideas. We talk a lot about what everybody does in the district and who's in charge of what. And then we're looking at a lot of the data that is very much out there on the website. We are incredibly good at providing data and putting it out there for our parents to see. They, of course, don't understand some of the data, so we're interpreting that data and saying, this is what it means. And a lot of parents have said, well, I didn't respond to that survey. And why didn't you respond? Well, I don't understand. I was working, or I didn't get a chance to do it. So we're finding that some of the parents are not reflected in that data. Why are they not? So we're still looking at data again. We're still looking at how to make that data more accessible for our parents, right? And the other thing that we're doing as well as a district is also having our parents learn. So many of our new American parents want to learn about technology, want to learn about Power School, want to learn about finances and how to save and how to budget and all that other thing. So we're empowering them to do that. We called it Parent University. And students and parents are coming to the table on this. It's online in the winter and it's in person during the academic year between March and June to talk about, different things, how to save for college, how to apply for college, how to balance your checkbook. We bring people from the community outside that want to help with all of these endeavors that we're doing. So providing that information to parents helps parents learn how to budget, learn how to save. And that helps in turn the youth. So they're able to say, hey, mom and dad, we're not going to get into trouble. We're going to be saving because youth work a lot. So it's creating that belonging and well-being for the students and the families. Because once we know their needs are met in the family, then the student feels much more confident that they're going to come into a school and they're engaged in their learning. Of course, deeper learning comes in place as well. Many of our youth are saying that they're not seeing themselves in the curriculum. They're not seeing themselves in the educators that are teaching them, right? So we have a lot of work to do. And this is to say that we're not ignoring the problem. We're definitely trying to invest the work in trying to retain and recruit educators that look like our students. It is not the easiest thing to do right now. Our budgets are incredibly tight. However, what we've started to do is we have a whole department of multilingual learners, liaisons that are currently in our schools that their kids trust. And why not help them provide, that professional development that they need in order for them to become these educators that their youth need and want, that their youth already trust and they see in the school district all the time. So we're looking at that as well. So that's incredibly powerful. Part of the other work that we're doing and that I'm really trying to focus, I know that Beck focused on one school. One of the schools that I really want to uplift is our Eagle Bay Academy program, which is an alternative program for our high school students. And this school is not far from the new high school that's being created right now. They are individuals that have just that much more need for being able to find different ways and means of being educated from the conventional educational system. And this could be place-based learning. And it's proven to me that chronic absenteeism is very high there. I've seen it. I know because I talk to the students on a daily basis. And one of the things they told me that I was startled was that they're not engaged because they just don't find themselves in the curriculum. They don't find themselves feeling like they want to be part of it. It's not relevant to what the world outside is telling them, right? And the food was not very good. And so I tackled the food first and foremost, because when you are not getting what you need as far as nourishment, even as adults, we're not going to be there. It's very difficult to be there. And so we provided a humanities course. We uplifted a humanities course that talks about foods. We called it Global Eats from Local Streets. We connected that to the world. We connected that to the local community here in Burlington. And we brought in outside family members, educators that wanted to cook for our kids and show them a life skill. And it brought so many kids back into the Eagle Bay Academy program. Why? Because food was one of the biggest drivers. They learned a skill. They connected with somebody that looked differently. So we had many community members provide all these different types of, recipes or foods or ingredients that made this course possible. That's how we're engaging our youth, because we know that in order for them to feel valued, heard, and seen, we have to listen to what they're saying, and we have to be able to put that into action, not just say we're going to do it and not do anything about it.
Awesome. Thank you, Maria, for that comprehensive overview of all of the profound work happening across the Burlington School District. And our final panelists, we're going to move from Chittenden County up to the Northeast Kingdom, to the North Country Supervisory Union, where Lisa Daigle-Farney is joining us in the role of Community Home Liaison. So I wonder, Lisa, if you want to start by sharing what that role is and how you partner with Samantha Stevens as well, who's the community school coordinator from the district. So take it away, Lisa.
Okay, thank you. Great work, you guys, Beck and Maria. Really that focus on belonging and well-being for not just students, but for parents, right? We really got to work with both of them. And we have a real restorative approach here, and we do a lot of restorative work with like the whole family, because we have families that are really in distress with drug problems, poverty, lack of food, all the things you talk about. So by meeting with the family, we can do some good work around getting the resources they need in order to help them get their kids to school. Because when parents are really stressed out, as you know, school is not a priority. So we do a lot of that. And we go to the schools. We do home visits a lot. We transport a lot of students. We have parents who can't get their kids to school or are having some serious mental health problems where they just can't pull it together to get their kids to school. So we pick up kids, we go pick them up, and then we spend time with mom or dad to see if we can support them in any way. We've also done a lot of community work. We've had an Art Van Gogh class, which was for kids and families to come. And we had an art teacher from the high school and myself who did it. I'm not an artist, by the way. I was the runner, I would say. And we had pizza, and it was just great. And it just grew and grew. And we also had a STEM workshop where our local science teacher came and did a few workshops. Kids loved that. I did a couple of crock pot workshops where I brought crock pots and recipe books. Everybody got a free crock pot and a recipe book, and we made a meal together in the crock pot that they could take home and they'd have dinner all ready the next night. And that was like a really easy thing to do. And everyone loved it, including the kids. They just loved, throwing everything in a pot, having a cookbook to take home and try that out. Every once in a while, I'll see someone on the street and they'll say, "Oh, you're the crock pot lady." So I think we'll probably do that again. And Sam is thinking about doing a quilting workshop where kids can make quilts. Everybody can, make a piece and make a quilt for whatever. We haven't got it all straightened out yet, but I think it's going to be really great. And, we work really close with our pediatric office to make sure that kids are getting dental, mental health, and, we bring kids to dental appointments. I mean, I brought kids to Burlington for oral surgery. So we're really lucky we can do that because otherwise this wouldn't get done. And it's a really big issue up here in the Northeast Kingdom. We're getting a stronger relationship with our local mental health agency here. They're getting stronger and doing some good work. So we're feeling good about that. And we also work really closely with youth services here in town. So we have kids that, need to get out of the house and they have workshops, and they do field trips. And so we do a lot of strong connection with those folks. And Sam and I have recently been focusing very strongly on the graded school because we figured the sooner we start, the better. When we first started this work, we were focused on the high school and the junior high. We got to make sure everybody graduates. But now we're realizing we really got to start early. So we run reports. We have 12 schools in our district. We run reports for those schools weekly, and we address every truant child. So that might mean a home visit, might be a visit to the school for a meeting. We go to IEP meetings, CPS meetings with parents, because as you said, parents haven't had good experiences in school, so sometimes they're very intimidated. We go with them to food shelves, and so that's been really helpful. A lot of people are intimidated to stand outside where everybody can see them getting a box of food. And we've started serving hot coffee and hot chocolate and snacks in the food line. So it's become kind of a social event rather than I got to stand out here in the cold, and everybody can see me. So it's become kind of a fun thing. We got a nice little culture going out there. So, so transportation, good connections with pediatricians, really trying to focus on the younger population so we can hit them up early and be able to track them as we go. And just, when I come in the morning, I check the high flyers, my truancy group. And if they're not in school, I call the parents. So the first thing I do in the morning is I'm on the phone, for a couple hours. And that's really helpful because I can find out what's going on and then I can reach out and say, well, what can I do for you? We got to get these kids to school. So that's kind of how we kind of approach things here. We try to get students involved in helping us organize different events. We got some kids who love doing that. And just really trying to connect resources for everybody. So they have what they need so they can go to school and feel safe and fed and warm. So, and so we run a lot of data. As I said, we run reports, truancy reports daily. And that helps me to keep on top of that and keep on top of the truant kids. We had a recent story, I'll just tell you quick, of an 8th grader who hadn't been to school for 4 months. And his mother was in here crying and he wouldn't talk. He just wouldn't talk. And so we asked for another meeting. He said, no, I'm not going. So I went to the house and he didn't want to come out of his bedroom. And I said, that's okay. I can come in your bedroom. And we sat, he wouldn't look at me. And I just explained to him that I was there to help him. But I really needed him to do it with me because he's a student and only he knows what he needs. And so at the end of that meeting, I said, I'm just going to come here weekly and you and I can sit together and we're going to figure this out. We're going to figure out what's going to work for you. Well, I didn't have to go a second week. He's been going to school every day and he's so happy to be back. And he is a football player. So I played big on that. I said, we need you on the football team next year at the high school. And he's doing great. And I saw his mother yesterday and she said he thanked his mother for bringing us in. He said, I think I owe them an apology. I was pretty rude. And I said, no apology. We just want you to go to school. So I'm really happy about that. But yeah, just starting earlier and making sure, the resources are out there for kids and families so they can get to school. Yeah.
That's a profound story, Lisa, almost in tears hearing that.
Well, I don't think he wanted me to hang out in his bedroom every week. So that was kind of, I think, an incentive.
Yeah. And the last slide is actually someone from the early preschool. So I don't know, Lisa, if you want to pinpoint certain things in this letter, but this was written to the community schools grantees, which at that time was the Agency of Education, talking about the profound impact of your work and Sam's work on chronic absenteeism and student belonging at the preschool level, right? So your point about starting earlier is definitely noticed, and this is a reflection by this letter.
So Kristen, I'll just give you a little recap. Roberge was the preschool teacher at Troy School. And there were some families that were really isolated. And sometimes when they only have half a day of school, there isn't busing. So they asked us if we could pick up some kids. And we had this particular family where the little guy, you couldn't understand him. He just had some really, really serious speech problems. And so I picked him up. Sam and I picked him up. We took turns. And we would start really talking with him. We'd say, where do you live now? What's the name of your road? Come to find out he was tongue-tied and he really just needed some surgery. And so we were able to hook up with the early childhood folks and get that done and to continue to work with mom, who's very, very isolated. And the kids have some, health issues that really need to be attended to. But, and just financially really stressed. So we were able to get food boxes from the school for them. And I worked pretty intently with mom and still continue to this day to do that with that family. 3 small children, all have speech issues. Anyway, so yeah, that was kind of nice because we started early with these families and we're still working with them. So, making that connection early on has been really helpful for the family and for us because we can continue that work with them.
Amazing. Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, and what a testament, right? Written in this letter about the work. So, so that is our panel, right? So hopefully you all were inspired and moved and saw connections to the ways in which your own contexts and roles can support connection, belonging, bearing witness, listening, holding space for families, students, and educators. And so I think I'll kick us off with one question. We have about 10 minutes, but I'd love to open it up. And I think Heidi's been monitoring the chat. So I was struck, Maria, Beck, and Lisa, by the role of data. All of you talked about the importance of data. And I'm wondering if you all could speak to how you've built sort of a culture related to reviewing and looking at data pretty frequently, right? And what are some of the key strategies that you all use to leverage data to support action and reflection?
I'm happy to
You
start.
unmuted, Beck. So maybe Beck and then Maria. I saw the unmuting first of Beck.
Yeah, I think Maria, maybe just like ping pong off each other. What our goal for the next year is to get our data in order. Across the district, schools are doing it differently, and I am like a little bit like this. We do it by hand in Excel because it's more efficient for us as a team to hand do attendance and look for trends in that way. And so like, I know it's not efficient. I'm like hearing everybody in the background. But for us to be able to like use data in the way that we wanted to and manipulate it the way we wanted to, we are really like committed to this in this building. And as we move into a district-wide approach and building that out, we're looking to create more sustainable ways to use data. So our data management systems speak to each other variably depending on what we're using. Schools use them variably. It is our goal of year 2 is to really like get our data in order so that we can be using it as a resource that's easy, consistent, and consistent among multiple buildings, so that we're all speaking to the same kind of caliber and quality of numbers, so that we can respond in ways that are consistent.
Amazing. I like that. Easy, consistent, and consistent among buildings. I wrote that down. That's amazing. Maria, did you want to add to that?
So Beck, I'm fortunate that at the district, we have some really incredible data people, and it is very much about asking them, they're continuously looking and surveying and gathering data and putting it together, compiling it, and pushing it out to us so we can have real-time data. But one of the things that we are also doing is turning to our youth. We do youth participatory action research in many of our schools, and they are looking at the data. We're training them to see what the data looks like so they can then research it and find out where they want to be, where should we be, right? And so what they're going out and organically having conversations and quickly jotting down some data, and then they bring it back to their group, their youth participatory action research group, and they talk about it. And so we gather that data and we collate it, and just talk about it. This is what this youth came up with in this school, and this is powerful. Should we be looking at that as well? And can we gather more? So we empower them to look at their own data and advocate for themselves and changes that they want to see in their district. But don't forget, to one of the people here in the chat's point about contact, David Kelly said, it is a lot of time to connect with parents. You can do touch points. It doesn't have to take a lot of time. It's before, during, and after with teachers. It's building those relationships that's going to make that journey for that individual much better. Having that relationship. They want connection. They, being the youth, want connection to their teachers. They want connection to the school community. And we're human, and that's what we need. That's what we want. That's what we should be giving them. And don't forget the joy. The joy needs to be in there as well.
Yeah. Well said. Lisa, anything you wanted to add related to data?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, we have some really good ways to collect data in our district because we're a big district. And one of the things, I can print attendance for individual schools, so I can look at that and make some comparisons. I can also look at individual students, and if I see a student has missed 30 days of school because of illness, then I can really start working with a parent and saying, I'm really concerned about the illness piece. Have you seen your pediatrician? Can I help you with that? Do you need a ride? And so try to make those connections, because sometimes you see those patterns that you can reach out and do some support around. And other times, it might be lots of incidents, behavioral stuff that kids are having. So how can we work with families to help with the behavioral stuff? So it's a really good way to be able to point out resources that families can use when you're looking at data.
Awesome. So I think I'm going to pause with my questions because I've got tons of more, but I want to open up to make sure that we're responsive to the audience with chats and comments. So Heidi, anything you want to surface up?
Yeah, I think you guys have hit a lot of them already.
Can I just, Cassandra had in addition to a reduction in absences and truancy, what other outcomes are community schools seeing? Any academic or school climate outcomes? And I'm interested in that too, with the bullying and harassment piece. Is it making a difference? Is there less going on?
Thanks for that. Anyone want to, Lisa, Beck, or Maria, speak to other outcomes you're looking at or reductions in bullying, hazing, or harassment?
Sure, Lori. So we, because the district is so diverse, do have a lot, and we're looking at the data on how it's ticking up for. Sometimes it has its ebbs and flows, particularly on disabilities, right? Differing abilities, that's ticking up, harassment on that. And so what we do, again, leveraging our youth and empowering them to make sure that they have an academic journey that they want to see, is that we're teaching them how to do public service announcements and they are doing their own public service announcement, TikTok style, 1 or 2 minutes, just videos on what is it? What does it look like? What does it feel like? And how we need to stop it. And it runs the gamut. It could be hazing, harassment, bullying, sexual abuse, AI right now, cell phone use, all that. And that is all on our website at the Burlington School District website, all the public service announcement that the kids do. We find that youth listen better to other youth when they're doing this work, right? And we're using the same videos in our professional development with staff. So they are also aware of what it looks like, what it sounds like, what it feels like. And so we can mitigate these changes. So it is changing the atmosphere. It's, have you seen the video of this? This is what it looks like. This is what sexual harassment is. And this is what you can do about it.
Awesome. Thanks, Maria. Lisa?
Hi, Lori. Lori, so what I do is when I do restorative work, bullying is a question I always have in my little gamut of questions. And if bullying is an issue, we really address that directly with the school immediately, just to see, what's really going on and try to get a whole picture, so that we can address it with the school and the student and the parents, because that comes up a lot. And I know you know that. So that's something we try to work directly with the schools. And that seems to work with individual situations. And we follow up and monitor that, because that's a big one for kids getting to school. Yeah.
Anything, Beck, you wanted to add to that question before? Yeah.
I'd like to put a plug that we have a next session on the ways that student outcomes, academic outcomes are moved through community schools. I think that that's like a great question for community schools to sit in. And like, I think is the theory of action on why we do this is that our young people are more successful through this approach across the board when families are held and supported, when we're engaged, when there's collaborative leadership. But I want to like plug that is like probably a place that we could put some effort next in this kind of a dialogue.
Well said, Beck. And with that, I know we're at the hour, so I'm going to wrap up and just acknowledge and thank and express my deepest gratitude to Lisa, Beck, and Maria for joining us and sharing the amazing work happening for Heidi, inviting this webinar to emphasize the role of community schools' approach in supporting students, families, and communities thrive and prosper. And to UVM, to some of our funders, the Leahy Institute, Senator Sanders, through the Congressional Earmark, the Vermont Agency of Education, and our community school partners. So thank you for having us today. And I'll stop sharing. And I think, Heidi, you've got an announcement, perhaps.
Yeah, just to close us out, thank you all so much for joining us today. Great engagement in the chat too. Thank you all for your thoughts. I think the only other big comments that we didn't get to were just folks resonating about the importance of engaging young people and parents and caregivers and staff as part of this work. We can't just address one part of this community. We have to really think about how we engage the whole crew. So thank you all so much. As I said at the beginning, this is the last session in our spring 2026 Everyday Counts Zoom series. I've dropped just a couple links into the chat, one to our Everyday Counts website, which will have the PowerPoint recording and the resources from this session. Also drop the exit ticket. We would love to hear from you, like what resonated from this session, but also like what else do you need out there? I put our Everyday Counts email address in there. We would just love to hear from you in terms of what resource needs folks feel like you would need to be able to continue this work to support school attendance in your communities. I put the link to the Catamount Community Schools Collaborative in, which has lots of great resources. So this series is ending, but our support is not going anywhere. So we'd just love to hear from you. I was thrilled last week. I got a bunch of emails after last week's session, and that makes me so happy. So please be in touch. Keep doing the good work out there. Thanks again to our amazing panel today. And thank you all so much for your time and attention so that all kids can be in school and all communities can thrive. We appreciate you all.
Thank you
so much.
Bye, everyone.